There you go. Now you don't get that little notice. Well, yeah, so first I just, to look ahead, FREP's May 11th program, and so that's a membership meeting, so that actually begins at 1 p.m. That will be featuring Edith Macra from the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus, who will be talking about the Regional Climate Action Plan and local communities that have adopted that. Our plan right now is to have Batavia Alderwoman Abby Beck, who also works for the Conservation Foundation, join us, and Geneva Mayor Ken Burns. Their communities have adopted this Regional Climate Action Plan. And so after we kind of get a little bit of a global view from Gary today on COP26, then I thought this would be a nice program for next month to look at what does that mean locally and what are Fox River communities doing with regard to climate change and what does this plan mean? So that's May 11th at 1 p.m. And then June 8th, our new network will be, we need to come up with a better title, but Rob Linke at King County has been working on compiling, essentially mapping, drainage mapping that shows where all the water runs and goes to in Kane County. So mapping all the stormwater basins and all the overland flow paths and things like that, so that when a project comes in and you're wondering, well, where does the water go or how does it get from here to there? And, I work on projects like that all the time where we don't really quite know. But that information's out there, and Rob's been working on gathering that for the last couple of years. So he's going to present that tool, and I think it'll be of great value to the communities in our watershed and also to the consultants that do a lot of that kind of work. So that's June 8th. And then in July will be our annual FREP picnic, and we'll have more information coming up about that soon. So with that, I will introduce Gary Cuneen, who, what's your title? You're the head guy of 7 Generations Ahead, right? The guy that has to raise the money and keep it going. And Gary helped us get Fox Valley Sustainability Network founded. And he's founded a number of other nonprofits like the Illinois Food Scrap Coalition. Definitely a great help to FREP and a mover and a shaker in our area. But Gary's had the privilege of attending the last couple of climate change conventions known as COP, together with students from their It's Our Future program. And so we asked Gary to talk about their experiences at the last one. So Gary, take it away.
Alrighty, so I'm gonna go on to share screen and pull up my, you're gonna have to enable it.
Hold on.
And
there we go.
There we go. And pull up my PowerPoint. Is that it? Oops. Let's start that from the beginning. I could go backwards, I guess, but no. There we go. All righty. Can everybody see that?
Yep. Looks
okay,
good.
Great. Well, thanks again for the invitation. It's good to see all of you again, and really have this opportunity to share what was really an incredible and unique experience, particularly for the youth. And I'm going to provide, I'm going to get into a lot of details about what transpired at COP. Of course, it's probably, a fraction of what actually transpired, but really cover some of the top level pieces. But before I do that, I'm going to set it up a little bit. I'll provide a little context, background about 7 Generations Ahead, and then It's Our Future program, which is part of a Planet Green initiative, which I'll explain. So anyway, let me just jump in. And we are a 501c3 nonprofit. It's a group I founded in 2001. So we just celebrated our 20th anniversary. As Jeff mentioned, we have over the years developed a variety of different networks and programs and initiatives. We're running the Illinois Farm to School Network and the Farm to School Coalition. We have a Zero Waste Schools program right now that has been implemented across the metro area. doing some work in McHenry County, but we have a special project with Chicago Public Schools called CPS Zero Waste. We produce conferences, 23 events in 4 states called Greentown since 2007. Some of you I know have been involved in those. And Planet Green is the development and implementation of a 2 community sustainability plan for Oak Park and River Forest. I'll mention a little bit more about that. The Illinois Food Scrap Coalition works on comprehensive policy and strategies to advance food scrap composting across Illinois. And Jeff mentioned the Fox Valley Sustainability Network, which is something that we founded really after discussions with former mayor of Aurora, Tom Weisner, who has since passed, and he was really interested in having Aurora be sort of a hub to draw other communities in the Fox Valley into working on sustainability. I will do a brief commercial. We are doing a Fox Valley Sustainability Network on solar on Tuesday, April 19th. So that's next week at 10 a.m. If you go to the Fox Valley Sustainability Network website, you can register for that forum, and it's gonna focus on really comprehensive, all the new programs that have come out through FEJA and CEJA, but also, more generically, how can institutions procure solar energy, and how can institutions actually create new solar energy projects. So I think it's going to be a good session. The Wasted Food Action Alliance is a group we facilitate that works on food recovery and reducing food waste. It's Our Future is the youth program that is the cornerstone for the COP experiences. And CPS Go Solar is a really exciting new project we're working on with Chicago Public Schools to maximize on-site installations on CPS buildings. Just put out an RFP for 13 buildings. And then we're working on procurement education with that. And I already mentioned CPS Zero Waste. So those are some of the things that we're involved in. The Planet Green initiative, as I mentioned, is really implementing the sustainability plan for Oak Park and River Forest. The Village of Oak Park right now is developing a community engagement process for a new climate action plan, which we're really glad to see that's happening, and it sort of comes at perfect timing after the 10 years for the plan that we worked on. And the project continues. We have a strong focus on equity and working across our borders, clean energy, zero waste, youth, and then metrics and reporting. I forget when this happened, but probably in 2018, we entered a proposal to participate in a big idea challenge, and we had to make a what's it called, a Shark Tank like pitch with 4 other projects in front of a couple hundred people and 40 judges, and we pitched the It's Our Future program, which is really designed to educate students about the climate crisis, build their advocacy skills, communication skills, engage them in local action, and then send youth to the UN climate summits. So we won the prize, and then since that we've been incorporating It's Our Future into our Planet Green project that the Oak Park River Forest Community Foundation funds. And so some of the things that the youth are doing are they're making presentations to community boards, to our local high school and our elementary schools, our park districts, and really advocating for sometimes things very specifically like an opt-out food scrap composting program. We have opt-in already right now in both Oak Park and River Forest, but it only reaches a certain percentage of the community. To advocating for renewable energy procurement and installations, and advocating for sustainability policies and plans for our schools and other institutions. We had one youth that went to COP26 with us from Chicago Public Schools present to the CPS Board of Education, and he spoke about his experience at COP, but also advocated for the CPS Go Solar project that we're working on. And the board president was really thrilled to hear that advocacy and said, yes, I don't know why we don't have solar panels on all of our buildings. So so the youth advocacy actually has been a really strong component. We right now have 4 youth that are working with me on the development of our high schools sustainability policy, and that we've reviewed policies from across the country. And so we're really putting them to work on local action. And 3 of the youth from Oak Park River Forest are 3 of the youth that went to the COP26 summit in Glasgow. So anyway, that provides a little bit of background. For that summit, we were able to send 3 Oak Park River Forest High School students, 1 CPS student, 2 CPS teachers, and 1 student from Evanston Township High School. It was, it was an experience that obviously had some great energy, had a lot of reason for hope, and then of course there were some a lot of downsides, which I'll kind of touch on here shortly. But the president of COP26, Alok Sharma, said that the key for this event was that there has to be strong action plans and reduction commitments, and he enumerated the goal targets that the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has put forth, which is 45% reduction in global emissions by 2030 from 2010 levels, and then to reach 100% net zero, by mid-century, by 2050. So, and really was strongly advocating for concrete action plans, agreements on reducing coal, increasing electric vehicles, protecting trees and forests, and reducing methane. There was also a $100 billion pledge that was made as part of the Paris Accord to fund climate action and adaptation in developing countries, and that they're not close to funding at that dollar level. But as you're probably well aware, the countries that are the poorest countries are suffering the most from climate change and having to adapt and really deal with the impacts of increased flooding, torrential rain events, hurricanes, fires, etc. So there was a lot of stake involved in this one, because 2020 was missed due to COVID, and they really didn't get as much work done during 2020 as was hoped, and the world attention is even greater now on what comes out of these COP UN Climate Summit events. The youth, they attended sessions. 7 Generations Ahead had applied to be an official observer organization at COP26, and we were accepted. And so they were able to get in there and be there with all the big wigs and attend sessions. And they also attended a march that was led by Greta in Glasgow. And then we put them to work and having them send back daily dispatches, social media posts, pictures, videos, etc. And they got a chance to hear from, in some cases, be within 6 feet from people like Al Gore, Bill Gates, John Kerry, Prince Williams, the presidents of different countries, former UK Prime Minister Theresa May, the Greta Thunberg of Germany, and all these other youth activists that were there from around the world. So suffice to say, they were just completely energized by that, and they were just they would make comments like, "I can't believe that that's Bill Gates standing right there," or it was kind of eye-opening and exhilarating for them. So they also had an opportunity to really express their opinions. They were interviewed by NPR London. They were videotaped by BBC as part of the Kingdom of Tonga initiative. And one of our youth had the opportunity to, we had about 15 minutes with Governor Pritzker, and had a nice interview and dialogue with him. So that was very exciting. And it was just something, again, that was for them a little bit surreal. However, they had a lot of critique of the whole experience as well, and I'll have a chance to touch on that hopefully. So just some really top level overview. Our U.S. government was represented in full force. Both on the federal level, there were 5 cabinet members in attendance. Each of the countries, or most of the countries, had their own pavilion, and so you could go to workshops and sessions that each of the countries was hosting. So the U.S. had one, and got a chance to hear from Tom Vilsack, John Kerry, Deb Haaland, and a couple of the other cabinet members. And there were mayors and governors and other folks that were from the U.S. that were there, and we got a chance to meet a handful of them. But it was just U.S. was heavily present as compared to 2019 when we went to Glasgow, or to Madrid, and that was our first time attending COP. And a couple of the Congress people attended. Nancy Pelosi was there, but of course President Trump wasn't there, and the U.S. Government did not send staff members, and so it was very poorly attended by the U.S. For this event, Russia, India, and Brazil did not send heads of state. In terms of commitments, both the United States and the European Union have made the 100% net zero, greenhouse gas emissions reductions, that net zero commitment by 2050. China's at 2060, India 2070. What they call the nationally determined contributions, the NDCs, if fulfilled, would keep global temps within 1.8 degrees Celsius. These numbers are going to continue to change, and they are. But current implementation gets us to 2.7. The scientists are recommending that we need to stay within 1.5 degrees. Post COP26, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said that current climate pledges would still mean a 14% increase in emissions, and most major emission emitters are not taking the steps needed to fulfill even these inadequate promises. So, just in terms of the commitments, it's pretty well understood that the commitments are not there to get us to where we need to be, let alone following through on them and the action. But Joe Biden was there, Al Gore, Barack Obama, and we got a chance. Al Gore's talk, and the youth said this as well, was probably the most amazing presentation that I've seen. And I've seen him present in other times, but he had amassed 45 minutes of video clips and pictures with rapid fire details about how climate change is impacting places on all corners of the globe. And it was so incredibly well done. And then the next 45 minutes was all about solutions. And he spoke with a lot of passion and a lot of fire, and it was just extraordinary. And Barack Obama, I think, did a really nice job as well. with his talk, which he actually focused a lot on youth and trying to inspire youth to stay in the game and work hard at this. You know, a couple highlights. Methane was a big issue, and Biden had, you know, announced his pledge to plug a lot of leaks from oil and gas wells in the U.S. There was a global pledge that was really significant, that would achieve approximately 145 megatons in reductions by 2030. Now, China and Russia were not part of that. And there's some other highlights I'll touch on shortly here. Queen Elizabeth did not personally attend, but she gave a talk from virtually, and she said, and she was super strong. She said, if we fail to cope with this challenge, all other problems will pale in significance. So the first major agreement was around deforestation. 105 world leaders representing 85% of the world's rainforests were part of this agreement, and that did include Brazil. And you may know that Brazil's president has been, under his watch, the Amazon rainforest has just increased in decimation, you know, with fires, with deforestation, et cetera. And he did not attend either, but he did prepare a statement, a video statement, a couple days or a week before, you know, announcing their commitments. So anyway, that was a positive. There's funding behind it, inadequate funding, quite frankly, but there is funding, and really an understanding of the important role that the rainforests play in being a carbon sink, and that because of deforestation, they're actually now, and the fires, they're actually emitting more carbon than they're sequestering. So a huge issue and a big piece of the puzzle. Gina McCarthy, one of the other cabinet members, talked about the Prepare Initiative for climate adaptation, and so again, understanding that we're in the midst of the climate crisis, and just dealing with the impacts is so much work, and is going to require so much money, let alone stopping the climate crisis. There was some talk around marine corridor protection. I got a chance to talk with the president of Palau. Actually, before I get into that, let me mention this piece real quick about Tonga. So back in 2019, I just had a random meeting with the representative from the Kingdom of Tonga, Uli Luisi, and he gave a special presentation. Is working on a big project with other Pacific Island nations that, of course, have the most to lose as the sea level rises. They will lose their island nations, and all of their heritage and culture. So there's an initiative called Tonga Above, where we got a special invitation to participate, and the youth got a special half hour with him after the presentation. They were also part of a BBC interviewing for a big video production that's going to happen. And so that was one of their big highlights. He's just such an amazing, loving, wonderful human being, and the youth just really enjoyed being with him and learning from him. But back to the marine protected areas, you know, a lot of fisheries are being depleted. Palau is one of the countries early on that saw its fishing stock deplete incredibly due to fishing fleets coming from other countries and tourism and their own exports. So they literally turned an area the size of France into a marine protected area, and only allowed, they cut off their export business. They only allowed for feeding of their local people on their island. And so they did this, and then the results have been actually astounding, how fish have been able to come back. So they're managing that area so well, and there are now conferences around marine protected areas. In fact, the last one was held in February of this year in Palau, and it's something that the U.S. government is significantly behind, and so it's that's kind of a beacon of hope, and there are more coastal countries that are participating in this initiative. So that's a very positive thing. Regarding finances, and this is one of the things that actually Bill Gates had picked up on, in terms of, Bill Gates had a couple of things that he was most inspired by, was the amount of private capital that's been amassed to deal with this issue, and then also about some of the amazing technologies that are being developed. And on the finance side, $130 trillion in private capital has been amassed. The issue, quite frankly, though, is how that's going to be allocated, how that's going to be distributed, and what, and our countries and communities prepared to put in sound proposals and execute on the use of that capital. Also, just the coordination around lending standards, transparencies, and so. But there is a growing movement in the private sector that's putting dollars behind addressing the climate issue. Again, a reiteration of the commitment to reach the Green Fund dollar amount. It's not happening nearly at the level that's needed. There was estimates stated in one of the sessions that the world would need $1 to $2 trillion a year for 30 years to reach net zero. So we're not even remotely close to that. I believe that picture is the picture of the president of Nigeria, who we happened to run into. And so the youth were like amazed to be close to country presidents. That's a picture of Bill Gates in one of his sessions. So, the bad and the good, right? I mean, governments are still planning to produce more than double the amount of fossil fuels that would be, consistent with the 1.5 degrees Celsius goal. Increases in oil and gas production are predicted. But there is a coalition that has now over 100 members, some countries, and then a lot of other sub-country entities that are making plans on a timeline to eliminate coal. So that's a positive thing, shift to clean energy. Let me just check my time here. Okay, should I, another 15 minutes, does that work, or okay. Offshore wind was, there was a session that Deb Haaland, was the first Native American cabinet member ever in the U.S. U.S. Expressed its commitments to 30 gigawatts by 2030. Globally, there was an estimate of 380 gigawatts by 2030. Denmark is leading the charge, and not only are they meeting and exceeding their own goal targets, but they're teaching other countries how to do the same. So sharing the technology and expertise and capital development that would help other countries to develop offshore wind. One of the biggest issues in this whole COP experience is just, okay, transparency. So governments make greenhouse gas emissions commitments and goal targets, but how do those get reported? And are are they transparent? Is there consistency in the reporting? And we're talking about getting down to the level of software and just how the inventories are created, and the reporting timeframes and all of that. I mean, there's so many details around this. I mean, honestly, we experience it on a micro level in here in the Chicago metro area. Everybody's using a different software program, and everybody is measuring some of the same things, but also some different things. So how do you develop some consistency in the reporting in what's reported, and then, you know, utilizing a consistent software and process. Oh my gosh, I sat in on some of those sessions and it was just head spinning. And it was so process oriented too, which was a little bit frustrating. One of the big issues is the international carbon market, and this is really establishing a UN mechanism for carbon trading. So if you're let's say a wealthier country and you're not meeting your greenhouse gas emissions reduction goals, you could pay for another country that is meeting its goals to build a project that would reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and then the country that paid for that would get the emissions credits in lieu of, you know, they're doing something in their own backyard. So the idea is that, you know, emissions would be reduced. It's like a win-win. Country B benefits from the clean energy and country A gets credit for the reductions. But there are some real issues that they still have not, they've been working on this for so long that they just haven't resolved. Double counting. So can country A and country B count those emissions? Well, no, they shouldn't be able to. It's a no-brainer, but, you know, how does that get worked out? Additionality, was a country already going to do this? And if so, it's not really adding more value to the spirit of, you know, reducing emissions. And there's really a big concern that the international carbon market is could be a greenwashing opportunity for high emitting countries. And so there's still tons of issues that are plaguing that moving forward. So Article 6 will continue to be discussed, I'm sure, at COP27. Again, you know, back to the rainforests, Amazon rainforest, for example, emits 1.1 billion tons of CO2 a year, more than it sequesters. That's a huge issue. There's an effort called FACT that's really trying to look at how rainforest commodities are developed, and could there be economic alternatives to preserve the rainforest, but still help those communities to have jobs and have sustainable production. So that's in process. So I'll just kind of next two slides and then end. You know, some observations here. Obviously, you know, this is even more relevant now with Russia invading Ukraine, and all the geopolitical issues around that. But even prior to that, trust among the nations has remained a huge issue, and that, you know, that impacts what they're doing in relationship to the climate. Credibility. A lot of countries are making plans and claims, but are they actually following through on them? As I mentioned, 2020 progress was limited. They've talked about needing more negotiation time at the COP summits, which are 2 weeks long. But, you know, some of the negotiations, and I sat on a handful of them, they're, you know, technical, and again, they're working on process stuff. They're wordsmithing. There's like countries, what's the right word? Grandstanding, if you will, a little bit. And so, you know, just imagine the whole idea of 200 countries trying to come together and agree on a common goal and all the process components related to it. It's really, you know, it's human frailty at its best and worst. At the same time, there, you know, a lot of people that are working extremely hard. I think the president of COP, Alok Sharma, did a really, really excellent job, but he's limited, of course, in what he can do and what he can push forward. So, you know, there's still this big push to keep 1.5 alive. I just know that the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change reports are going to, as we progress, are going to probably present an even more dire situation. And so 45% greenhouse gas emissions reductions by 2030 may need to bump up if we're going to stay within that keep 1.5 alive goal. I'm trying, and I know other people want to bring the energy of COP to the local level, you know, and on our state level. I actually floated through a contact, an idea to the governor to have an Illinois COP that would have accountability around this, because we have to have accountability. And despite, you know, everybody's best intentions, we have to bring more rigor to what's happening in Illinois, in our communities. The young people get it. We'll be sending more to COP27 in this year in Sharm el Sheikh, Egypt. And, you know, I think the message here is, let's be relevant. Let's figure out ways to help meet the greenhouse gas emissions reduction goals and encourage others to do so. So with that, I'll just end, and then if we want to entertain questions, we can. And I do have a 2-minute cell phone video that I could show one of our youth. I was telling Jeff that we're doing a Google server migration thing, and so I don't have access to the video on the computer. But anyway, any comments or questions, be happy to engage in conversation.
No, thanks, Gary. So I have a few, but I'll hold mine here for a minute. Anybody else have comments or questions that you want to ask, or things we want to discuss? Feel free to unmute yourself and throw them out there. Linda, I see you unmuting. You must have some questions. There you go.
That challenge, regardless of your profession or business, I would recommend expanding that into our individual lives. And like Jeff and I belong to the same church, and we're addressing climate change there. So it's the total picture.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, we have to be doing things on all levels,
right,
and within our sphere of control, for sure.
And it all scales, you know, everyone's always worried about, well, I can't really do this perfectly, so I'm not going to do it at all. And
right.
That we need everyone doing it imperfectly. So I was wondering, Gary, about certain sort of sectors of the global economy and how they might have been represented there, like the financial world and, you know, all of the power they have to invest or divest from fossil fuels and all of that. Is there a presence by some of the big world banks and things there?
Yeah, I mean, Bloomberg was there, and I think Bill Gates was representing himself, but I know that there were sessions that engaged our financial institutions. The World Bank has been just highly criticized for its lack of being in this game. I don't know whether they were present or not. I imagine that there was some representation there, but they have been critiqued strongly for not supporting particularly more developing countries that are experiencing the impacts of climate change, and that want to do things. So I think there's clearly a mixed bag, but again, there's been a lot of private sector engagement. I mean, Bloomberg and BlackRock and others are putting investments into this, and literally see the writing on the wall, I believe. So that's a positive.
Yeah, okay, well, that's good to hear. It does seem like maybe they need to be a little more engaged. I attended McHenry County Conservation District's Conservation Congress, was that last week or the week before? And their keynote speaker was this global analyst from Bank of America, Merrill Lynch. And, he talked in the industry, they call it ESP, environment, social justice, and people. And in their view, the businesses that pay attention to ESP are the ones that are going to make it. And those that do not pay attention to that take the classic short-term view, simply do not end up making it. And that's what they look at in their investments. And he had a lot of interesting things to say about that too, but it just still seems like there's a lot of disconnect between, us ordinary citizens and what we may own in our retirement funds and all of that, and getting that divested more out of fossil fuel. I also wondered about construction industry. Are they a part of it? Because I've learned that things like the manufacture of concrete is a huge emitter of greenhouse gases, right? That most people don't realize. And I recently read an article about maybe we should just stop building because we have enough building stock that if we repurposed it all, we'd have enough.
Yeah, the construction industry and the creation of concrete in particular is something that Bill Gates has touched on a lot.
Okay.
It's one of those pieces that sometimes it just doesn't come up that frequently, but it's a huge contributor to emissions, and so there's a lot of work right now on developing technologies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the production of concrete, but and so I know that's happening, but it's there wasn't a lot of play at COP26 on that particular topic.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Interesting. All right.
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything? You're all being very quiet. A little bit small.
We will be sending. We're an observer organization again this year, and we're
Okay.
and we have funding. We're going to be seeking additional funding to send, hopefully, 4 or 5 youth again this year, and chaperones to Sharm el Sheikh in Egypt, and so it should be really interesting. I mean, we're getting updates regularly from the UN about meetings that are happening in Europe right now, and so I know a lot of work is being done in preparation for that event in Egypt, but we'll be, we're in the process right now of interviewing youth, and we'll be making youth selections, and then doing all the prep work with the youth prior to the trip. So we'll keep you posted on that as it develops.
Yeah. Are the videos that you made at COP26 with some of the youth? I remember watching some of those online at the time. I think you were sending updates maybe via Facebook or something like that. Is that all still online? Can people still access that? Could we link to that from our FREP page?
It should be, yeah. We're doing some additional website renovation's the wrong word, but
Yeah. Right.
so we're trying to get more of those up there, but I haven't checked recently, but they should be up there. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. All right. Well,
Yeah.
small but mighty group today, and you never know. These days, a lot of people, if we'll post this video of this presentation on our webpage, and people can access it there when they have time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like I say, next month we'll be chatting with Edith Macra and trying to look at how well we're doing on this at a local community level and see what we can do there.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
Do you think, with a lack of political commitment in our country, and my son, he's always on his phone, coming up with these statistics, and the high percentage of Americans that are concerned about climate change, and there's literally no action that I'm aware of in DC. And I myself felt as though I was going to go crazy if I didn't do something personally myself. So I've tried to address that. Do you think that we'll be able to turn this around without the commitment of countries to do this? Like individuals, we've talked about all of the things that are being done. Is there any hope in that?
That's actually a great question. And the answer, I think, is maybe, right? I mean, there's been so much work, particularly during the Trump administration, where there was no federal commitment and or engagement on this issue, and yet there was so much that was happening on the ground, locally in communities, on state levels, and so our federal government doesn't control everything that we do, fortunately. There's, I think that we're going to continue to see groundswells of engagement around this issue, both in our country and in other countries. And, of course, federal support for this and dollars behind this would go a long way. And we are working on a timeline. So that's extremely important, right? To have those investments. But whether those investments come at the levels needed or not, people are going to still work on this. And I mean, we're like you, I'm sure, you see local governments, local community institutions, local corporations, or businesses and global corporations with local presence that are really putting their money where their mouth is and reducing their greenhouse gas emissions. So I whether that's going to meet the goal targets that we need, I don't know. What I will say too is, and I've been giving the same response to the question of, well, do you think we're going to actually be successful at this, and what will it take? And I think what it's going to take, unfortunately, is just more horrific events, and more casualties and loss of precious natural resources. And it's going to take that happening with in communities where people in power are living, and unfortunately, we're going to see more horrific events. We're going to see more volume of those events, And it's kind of like, we as a human species, until somebody has a knife at our throat,
Right.
we don't move as quickly as we need to. So we'll see. But yes, I think local actions and individual actions are really important.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Gary, for all you do.
Thank you as well. I appreciate it.
Yep. All right. Thanks, Gary. And
All right.
thanks all. And see you soon.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Mhm.